If you don't understand the details of your business, you are going to fail. If you never want to be criticized, for goodness sake, don't do anything new. One of the huge mistakes people make is that they try to force an interest on themselves. You don't choose your passions choose you. Work hard, have fun, and make history. Everything you are comes from your choices. Life's too short to hang out with people who aren't resourceful. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. We can't be in survival mode. We have to be in growth mode. We are our choices. Build yourself a great story. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that, but I knew the one thing I might regret is not trying. If you can't feed a team with 2 pizzas, it's too large. People who are right most of the time are people who change their minds. Often the smartest people are constantly revising their understanding, reconsidering a problem they thought they'd already solved. They're open to new points of view, new information, new ideas, contradictions, and challenges to their own way of thinking. The common question that gets asked in business is, why? That's a good question, but an equally valid question is, why not? Obsess about customers, not competitors. Go to bed early and wake up early. The morning hours are good. To get something new done, you have to be stubborn and focused, to the point that others might find unreasonable. Where you are going to spend your time and your energy is one of the most important decisions you get to make in life. If you do build a great experience, customers tell each other about that. Word of mouth is very powerful. We are stubborn on vision. We are flexible on details. If you are going to do large-scale invention, you have to be willing to do 3 things. You must be willing to fail, you have to be willing to think long-term, and you have to be willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. In the end, we are our choices. It's hard to find things that won't sell online. The best customer service is if the customer doesn't need to call you, doesn't need to talk to you. It just works. Focusing on the customer makes a company more resilient. A brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. You earn reputation by trying to do hard things well. If we think long-term, we can accomplish things that we couldn't otherwise accomplish. If you're competitor-focused, you have to wait until there is a competitor doing something. Being customer-focused allows you to be more pioneering. We've had 3 big ideas at Amazon that we've stuck with for 18 years, and the reason we're successful: put the customer first. Invent. And be patient. Be proud of your choices, not your gifts. One of the things that gets me up in the morning is knowing that customer expectations are always rising, and I find that very exciting. I strongly believe that missionaries make better products. They care more. For a missionary, it's not just about the business. There has to be a business, and the business has to make sense, but that's not why you do it. You do it because you have something meaningful that motivates you. You know, if you make a customer unhappy, they won't tell 5 friends, they'll tell 5,000 friends. So, we are at a point now where we have all of the things we need to build an important and lasting company, and if we don't, it will be shame on us. Teachers, who are really good, create that environment where you can be very satisfied by the process of learning. If you do something and you find it a very satisfying experience, then you want to do more of it. The great teachers somehow convey in their very attitude and their words and their actions and everything they do that this is an important thing you're learning. You end up wanting to do more of it and more of it and more of it. That's a real talent. Some people have to convey the importance of that and to reflect it back to the students. Every new thing creates 2 new questions and 2 new opportunities. What's dangerous is not to evolve. Above all else, align with customers. Win when they win. Win only when they win. Failure comes part and parcel with invention. It's not optional. Invention is by its very nature disruptive. If you want to be understood at all times, then don't do anything new. Things never go smoothly. Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I try to spend my time on areas that I think are important for the future, and where I think I can add value. What we need to do is always lean into the future. When the world changes around you and when it changes against you, what used to be a tailwind is now a headwind. You have to lean into that and figure out what to do, because complaining isn't a strategy. I'd rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than hire the wrong person. We like to pioneer, we like to explore, we like to go down dark alleys and see what's on the other side. If everything you do needs to work on a 3-year time horizon, then you're competing against a lot of people. But if you're willing to invest on a 7-year time horizon, you're now competing against a fraction of those people, because very few companies are willing to do that. Just by lengthening the time horizon, you can engage in endeavors that you could never otherwise pursue. At Amazon, we like things to work in 5 to 7 years. We're willing to plant seeds, let them grow, and we're very stubborn. We say we're stubborn on vision and flexible on details. I think technology advanced faster than anticipated. In that whirlwind, a lot of companies didn't survive. The reason we have done well is because, even in that whirlwind, we kept heads down, focused on the customers. All the metrics that we can track about customers have improved every year. It's not an experiment if you know it's going to work. Our biggest cost is not power, or servers, or people. It's lack of utilization. It dominates all other costs. A company shouldn't get addicted to being shiny, because shiny doesn't last. If you decide that you're going to do only the things you know are going to work, you're going to leave a lot of opportunity on the table. I've not seen an effective manager or leader who can't spend some fraction of time down in the trenches. If they don't do that, they get out of touch with reality, and their whole thought and management process becomes abstract and disconnected. Though we are optimistic, we must remain vigilant and maintain a sense of urgency. If you only do things where you know the answer in advance, your company goes away. If you're not stubborn, you'll give up on experiments too soon. And if you're not flexible, you'll pound your head against the wall and you won't see a different solution to a problem you're trying to solve. If you make customers unhappy in the physical world, they might each tell 6 friends. If you make customers unhappy on the internet, they can each tell 6,000 friends. The most important single thing is to focus obsessively on the customer. Our goal is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. There are 2 kinds of companies, those that work to try to charge more and those that work to charge less. We will be the second. The 3 most important things in retail are location, location, location. The 3 most important things for our consumer business are technology, technology, technology. We see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little bit better. If you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later. I told all of our original investors that they would lose their money for sure. The great thing about fact-based decisions is that they overrule the hierarchy. When you receive criticism from well-meaning people, it pays to ask, are they right? And if they are, you need to adapt what they're doing. If they're not right, if you really have conviction that they're not right, you need to have that long-term willingness to be misunderstood. It's a key part of invention. If you build a great product or service, people will talk about it. But it starts with having something that's worth talking about. A lot of people, and I'm just not one of them, believe that you should live for the now. I think what you do is think about the great expanse of time ahead of you and try to make sure that you're planning for that in a way that's going to leave you ultimately satisfied. This is the way it works for me. If you want to be inventive, you have to be willing to fail. Percentage margins don't matter. What matters always is dollar margins, the actual dollar amount. Companies are valued not on their percentage margins, but on how many dollars they actually make, and a multiple of that. Entrepreneurs must be willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. If your customer base is aging with you, then eventually you are going to become obsolete or irrelevant. You need to be constantly figuring out who are your new customers and what are you doing to stay forever young. Determine what your customers need and work backwards. What I want to talk to you about today is the difference between gifts and choices. Cleverness is a gift, kindness is a choice. Gifts are easy, they're given after all. Choices can be hard. You can seduce yourself with your gifts if you're not careful, and if you do, it'll probably be to the detriment of your choices. The net is pretty cool, but the physical world is the best medium ever. If you double the number of experiments you do per year, you're going to double your inventiveness. Cleverness is a gift, kindness is a choice. Gifts are easy, they're given after all. Choices can be hard. It's perfectly healthy, encouraged, even to have an idea tomorrow that contradicted your idea today. I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, I'm looking back on my life. I want to minimize the number of regrets I have. And I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. I knew that that would haunt me every day. The thing about inventing is you have to be both stubborn and flexible. The hard part is figuring out when to be which. Read the Declaration of Independence to your children as a tradition every 4th of July. Make sure they understand why the word pursuit precedes the word happiness. My view is there's no bad time to innovate. I have a strongly held belief that one of the reasons that Amazon has been successful is because we do not obsess over competitors. Instead, we obsess over customers. If you're not doing something that people will remark on, then it's going to be hard to generate word of mouth. The death knell for any enterprise is to glorify the past, no matter how good it was. Advertising is the price you pay for unremakable thinking. Maintain a firm grasp of the obvious at all times. We also have no incentive compensation of any kind. And the reason we don't is because it is detrimental to teamwork. I think frugality drives innovation, just like other constraints do. One of the only ways to get out of a tight box is to invent your way out. Any business plan won't survive its first encounter with reality. The reality will always be different. It will never be the plan. Cleverness is a gift, kindness is a choice. You don't choose your passions choose you. Word of mouth is very powerful. Your brand is formed primarily not by what your company says about itself, but what the company does. The framework I found which made the decision incredibly easy was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So, I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. Our point of view is we will sell more if we help people make purchasing decisions. You can work long, hard, or smart, but at Amazon.com you can't choose 2 out of 3. I think one of the things people don't understand is we can build more shareholder value by lowering product prices than we can by trying to raise margins. It's a more patient approach, but we think it leads to a stronger, healthier company. It also serves customers much, much better. We've done price elasticity studies, and the answer is always that we should raise prices. We don't do that because we believe, and we have to take this as an article of faith, that by keeping our prices very, very low, we earn trust with customers over time, and that actually does maximize free cash flow over the long term. When you are 80 years old, and in a quiet moment of reflection narrating for only yourself the most personal version of your life story, the telling that will be most compact and meaningful will be the series of choices you have made. In the end, we are our choices. If you invent frequently and are willing to fail, then you never get to that point where you really need to bet the whole company. We watch our competitors, learn from them, see the things that they were doing for customers, and copy those things as much as we can. Our premise is there are going to be a lot of winners. It's not winner take all. Other people do not have to lose for us to win. Seek instant gratification or the elusive promise of it, and chances are you'll find a crowd there ahead of you. All businesses need to be young forever. If your customer base ages with you, you're Woolworths. There is no map, and charting a path ahead will not be easy. We will need to invent, which means we will need to experiment. If we can keep our competitors focused on us while we stay focused on the customer, ultimately we'll turn out all right. When in the shower in the morning, they're thinking about how they're going to get ahead of one of their top competitors. Here in the shower, we're thinking about how we are going to invent something on behalf of a customer. You want to look at what other companies are doing. It's very important not to be hermetically sealed. But you don't want to look at it as if, okay, we're going to copy that. You want to look at it and say, that's very interesting. What can we be inspired to do as a result of that? And then put your own unique twist on it. In Seattle, you haven't had enough coffee until you can thread a sewing machine while it's running. The thing that motivates me is a very common form of motivation. And that is, with other folks counting on me, it's so easy to be motivated. Because, resilience, if you think of it in terms of the gold rush, then you'd be pretty depressed right now because the last nugget of gold would be gone. But the good thing is, with innovation, there isn't a last nugget. Every new thing creates 2 new questions and 2 new opportunities. We innovate by starting with the customer and working backwards. That becomes the touchstone for how we invent. I never worked on the school newspaper. I love my life. I love being an inventor. My grandfather taught me that it is harder to be kind than it is to be clever. In the old world, you devoted 30% of your time to building a great service and 70% of your time to shouting about it. In the new world, that inverts. You don't want to negotiate the price of simple things you buy every day. We change our tools and then our tools change us. If there's one reason we have done better than of our peers in the internet space over the last 6 years, it is because we have focused like a laser on customer experience. The balance of power is shifting toward consumers and away from companies. The right way to respond to this, if you are a company, is to put the vast majority of your energy, attention, and dollars into building a great product or service and put a smaller amount into shouting about it, marketing it. I don't want to use my creative energy on somebody else's user interface. Are you lazy or just incompetent? The one thing that offends me the most is when I walk by a bank and see ads trying to convince people to take out second mortgages on their homes so they can go on vacation. That's approaching evil. If you're truly obsessed over customers, it'll cover a lot of errors. People love their horses, too. But you don't keep riding your horse to work just because you love it. Email has some magical ability to turn off the politeness gene in a human being. We're not competitor obsessed, we're customer obsessed. We start with the customer and we work backwards. If you look at academic studies, you can see that stock prices are most closely correlated with cash flow. It's such a straightforward number. Cash flow is what will drive shareholder returns. I'm skeptical of any mission that has advertisers at its centerpiece. I don't buy stocks, I make stocks. One of the things that I hope will distinguish Amazon.com is that we continue to be a company that defies easy analogy. This requires a lot of innovation, and innovation requires a lot of random walk. Effective process is not bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is senseless process. The people who are right a lot often change their minds. It's harder to be kind than clever. Ebooks had to happen. What characteristics do I look for when hiring somebody? That's one of the questions I ask when interviewing. I want to know what kind of people they would hire. Cultures, for better or worse, are very stable. What consumerism really is, at its worst, is getting people to buy things that don't actually improve their lives. People don't want gadgets, they want services. I'm skeptical that the novel will be reinvented. We are at the 1908 Hurley washing machine stage with the internet. We've got thousands of investors counting on us. And we're a team of thousands of employees all counting on each other. That's fun. The world is littered with corpses that predicted technology in a particular arena was done. If there's another gigantic step change out there, we don't yet know what it is. What we want to be is something completely new. There is no physical analog for what Amazon.com is becoming. The killer app that got the world ready for appliances was the light bulb. So the light bulb is what wired the world. And they weren't thinking about appliances when they wired the world. They were really thinking about they weren't putting electricity into the home. They were putting lighting into the home. I'm going to go do this crazy thing. I'm going to start this company selling books online. Lowering prices is easy. Being able to afford to lower prices is hard. There are a whole bunch of people who don't like to shop. But there are also people, maybe, who even do like to shop but are very time pressured. And so shopping online can save people time. Real estate is the key cost of physical retailers. That's why there's the old saw, location, location, location. On the internet, companies are scale businesses, characterized by high fixed costs and relatively low variable costs. You can be two sizes, you can be big, or you can be small. It's very hard to be medium. A lot of medium-sized companies had the financing rug pulled out from under them before they could get big. You have to use your judgment. In cases like that, we say, let's be simple-minded. We know this is a feature that's good for customers. Let's do it. Amazon.com strives to be the e-commerce destination where consumers can find and discover anything they want to buy online. I think if people read more, that is a better world. Our vision is every book ever printed in any language in under 60 seconds. Market leadership can translate directly to higher revenue, higher profitability, greater capital velocity, and correspondingly stronger returns on invested capital. If you're long-term oriented, customer interests and shareholder interests are aligned. Not the outcome any of us wanted. We are pioneers, and the history of pioneers is not that good. If you have a business model that relies on customers being misinformed, you better start working on changing your business model. I don't know about you, but most of my exchanges with cashiers are not that meaningful. Our garage was basically science fair central. There'll always be serendipity involved in discovery. I don't think that you can invent on behalf of customers unless you're willing to think long-term, because a lot of invention doesn't work. If you're going to invent, it means you're going to experiment, and if you're going to experiment, you're going to fail, and if you're going to fail, you have to think long-term. Am I going to regret leaving Wall Street? No. Will I regret missing the beginning of the internet? Yes. The internet is disrupting every media industry. People can complain about that, but complaining is not a strategy. And Amazon is not happening to book selling. The future is happening to book selling. Strip malls are history. If you're going to invest in an internet stock, you must be a long-term investor. Good ideas will always get funded, so that's not going to be a problem. But you will see that it will be harder and harder for bad ideas to get funded. I like to be counted on. It's very important for entrepreneurs to be realistic. So if you believe on that first day while you're writing the business plan that there's a 70% chance that the whole thing will fail, then that kind of relieves the pressure of self-doubt. Invention requires a long-term willingness to be misunderstood. We expect all our businesses to have a positive impact on our top and bottom lines. Profitability is very important to us, or we wouldn't be in this business. For every leader in the company, not just for me, there are decisions that can be made by analysis. These are the best kinds of decisions. One of the things it was obvious you could do with an online store is have a much more complete selection. If it's not your style to stretch and go the extra mile to make sure our customer experience is great, you're going to have an allergic reaction to this company. You probably won't stay. If you do try and stay, but can't adapt to the culture, then it will reject you like a virus from a healthy immune system. For people who are readers, reading is important to them.